Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Reality Bites, the show where we talk about all of the greatest hits reality TV shows have to offer. I'm your host, Jake Schaff. Let's get started. Wow, this episode of Survivor was certainly another trip. It, even though there was a team switch, honestly, I didn't really think too much exciting stuff was happening until the elimination happened. And now, one of the biggest players of this game's history has been eliminated, and we're looking at an entirely brand new game right now. I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's just jump straight into this episode, episode 5, the buddy system on steroids, which it certainly was. So, we start off the episode with a visit to the Dakal camp. They're talking about how they're a third of the way through the game. Everyone seems to be sitting pretty, and it almost seems like it's the cliche Survivor seems to throw at us a lot. Like right before a switch happens, we see a lot of people talking, we're loving things right now in our tribe. We don't want anything to change. And we see Nick saying how he loves his position in the game, all his allies are great. Already, like, if we didn't know that a switch was happening, we would have known a switch was happening then, once we heard that. And the mood suddenly shifts to a pretty somber one as we see Yule talking to Sarah and Wendell. And here's the interesting thing about Yule. And I heard about this clip a little earlier today, before the episode even aired. Yule was someone who, in the Cook Islands, when he was playing, he was very stoic. And he still is a very stoic person. But he just seemed to kind of be in the same mood the entire game. We never really saw, we never really saw a lot of emotion from him. We never saw him really cry. We never saw him really break down out in the Cook Islands. But this time was a little different because he started talking about another reason he was playing this game, not just for his family, but for the family of Jonathan Penner. Yule explained how he doesn't really keep in touch with a lot of people from his first time playing Survivor, with the exception of Jonathan Penner, who obviously has played this game 3 times, huge presence in the Survivor community. And then Yule explains how right now Jonathan and his wife are dealing with a horrible situation. Turns out in late 2017, because I did a little research, in late 2017, Jonathan's wife Stacy was diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, and it ended up growing worse very, very quickly. And how within less than a year, Stacy had completely lost the ability to walk, to speak, and lost the ability to even eat food. And how even at this point, the only part of her body that she really has part function still in is her eyes. And then we even see right when the show goes to commercial, we see one of those CBS Cares advertisements, and we see Stacy firsthand, and it's a very upsetting sight, and it's one that I totally had no idea that Jonathan and his family was going through until this morning when I found out. It's obviously really upsetting. My heart goes out to the entire Penner family. I hope that everything will be okay. I hope that science makes a miraculous discovery sooner rather than later, and that ALS can hopefully be cured, not just for Stacy, but for several people throughout the future. But obviously, with how close Yule is, and he talks about how this has been a huge strain on the two of them financially, we can see the passion in Yule, and he really starts to break down his giant pent-up walls of stoicness, or however you want to call it, and he breaks down and he starts crying, and we see him lean on some of his tribe mates. And it was a nice moment for Yule. It was a nice, and it just confirmed to me even more why I really like the guy and why I really want him to do so well in this game. He's not just playing for himself, he's playing for several other people outside of his own family, and I really like that. So Yule remains at the top of my list, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So moving over to Obviously, the big part of this episode, as is normally the case in these modern Survivor seasons, we had a tribe switch. And as I predicted last week, I predicted that the two tribes would become three tribes, given the fact that there were 15 people left, and it would be 5-5-5 on each tribe. Made sense to me. So everyone was split up. There was 5 people on Dakal, 5 people on Sele, and 5 people on a brand new tribe, the green tribe, Yara. So the tribe split up, ended up going something like this. On Dakal, we had Tony, Sandra, and Kim from the original Dakal tribe, and Denise and Jeremy from the original Sele. On the new Sele tribe, once again, we had 3 old Dakal members, Nick, Wendell, and Yule, and 2 old Sele members, Parvati and Michelle. Whereas on Yara, it's flip-flopped. We have 3 former Sele members, Rob, Ben, and Adam, and 2 former Dakal members, Sophie and Sarah. A lot of different dynamics, and I'll talk about each of those dynamics once I talk about the individual tribes, which I'm about to do right now. So let's not waste any time. Let's start with the Dakal tribe, because that's the tribe we went to first. If you look closely at this tribe, you can see some of the closer bonds everyone has. Denise and Jeremy, obviously, were really close on Sele. They were part of the same alliance, the New School Alliance. Sandra and Tony were kind of involved in an alliance on Dakal as part of the Game Changers trio, which I don't even know if that's an official alliance. I just keep using that name. And then you had Kim, who honestly wasn't really firm with anyone on the Dakal tribe except maybe Sophie because of the whole idol thing, which I'm going to talk about the idol in just a moment. So one thing I noticed right away that I hadn't noticed with the Dakal tribe before is that their shelter is a lot more upscale than Sele's shelter was. Probably due to the fact that Wendell was a member of the Dakal tribe, and given that he is a furniture designer, that likely helped out the tribe a ton with helping to structure the shelter soundly and helping to just make life around camp easier. So that was just something a little interesting I noticed. I mean, Wendell hasn't gotten a ton of screen time, but it's nice to know he's kept himself busy. Obviously, with everyone coming back to camp, Jeremy and Denise knew they were on the bottom, and they were trying to peruse the other members of the tribe, seeing if they could figure out where the weak spot is, and see if they can figure out who would be willing to jump ship. And the interesting thing about the Dakal tribe is that up until a little later in the episode, all of the immunity idols that were still in the game at that point were on the Dakal tribe, because Denise had her idol, Kim had her idol since Sophie gave her half back, and Sandra still has the idol she got from Natalie that she can only use at the next tribal council, and otherwise it has no more power. So I'm really curious if and when Dakal tribe goes to tribal council, surely one of those idols is going to be played, most likely Sandra's, and that's going to cause a giant firestorm. So Jeremy and Denise were looking around the camp, seeing if they could find some sort of weak spot for them to utilize and try to sway someone over to their side. And they managed to identify the weak spot, with it being Kim. Like I said before, Sandra and Tony seem to have a much closer bond, and Kim was never really aligned with anyone on the Dakal tribe. So now she's being presented with this brand new opportunity, and this could totally change Kim's position in the game. And looking at her 2 options, whether it be Sandra and Tony or Jeremy and Denise, it's tricky. I honestly am not sure what the smart decision is for Kim yet. Maybe by next week when she finally makes her decision, or when I just had more time to settle on this idea, I will have thought of it, but right now I'm not sure, because there's pros and cons to each decision. Obviously, the pro for working with Denise and Jeremy is that this could be a fresh start for Kim. These are people who absolutely don't know that she has an idol. Granted, I don't think Tony and Sandra know either. But on the downside, this will earn Kim the ire of every single member of the former Dakal tribe. and that's going to put a ton of targets on her back. Whereas if she stays with Sandra and Tony, obviously she's more familiar with those two, doesn't rock the boat that much, but will it really help her in the long run? Not only that, but Sandra and Tony are the two much bigger threats over Jeremy and Denise. So I don't know if it'd be a smart idea for Kim to continue working with them. It's still a lot to process. It's still a lot of unknown variables, and I'm curious to see how that's going to play out next week. Let's jump over to the Sele tribe. This one is a very interesting layout. Probably the most interesting layout of tribe members out of any of the three tribes, and I like that. Surprisingly, one alliance that I thought was going to be screwed for sure by the tribe switch was the Free Agents alliance of Yul, Sophie, Wendell, and Nick. But to my surprise, they've managed to stay almost completely intact, with 3 of the members staying together just on a brand new tribe. So not only do Nick, Wendell, and Yul have the numbers from a tribal standpoint, they were already closely aligned on the Sele tribe. This really could not have worked out any better for the 3 of them. And that's really great to hear, because this is one of my favorite alliances in the game. I want to see these 3 do really, really well in the future, so I'm happy this worked out. That being said, that doesn't mean everything is hunky-dory on the Sele camp. As I realized last week when the promo came out, Michelle revealed that she and Wendell had actually previously dated. Not for a very short time, and according to this episode, it now seems like this relationship did not end on very good terms. I don't know exactly what happened. I'm getting the sense that Wendell messed up somehow, and that really ticked Michelle off because she kept saying Wendell betrayed her trust. I'm not really going to get into that because I don't want to form opinions on something that may or may not be true. So I'm going to stay out of that one. But Michelle was already talking about how she would like things between her and Wendell to be pretty mellow, but Wendell was already saying stuff like, we can't talk together. I want us to just stay apart for a while and we'll talk later. So already Michelle is getting the sense that she's not going to get anything from Wendell. And she mentions probably one of my favorite lines of the entire episode, where she mentions how she so badly wants to be on a different tribe, and she just so badly wants to just say, new season, who dis? And just completely forget about Wendell, put him in the rear view, and just not worry about him in this game. Well, obviously that's not going to happen. Meanwhile, another interesting pairing that I hadn't really thought about a ton until now on the Sele tribe is that of Yul and Parvati, because the 2 of them played together on Cook Islands. That was Parvati's first season. And they were 2 people who were never really on the same page. They were on completely different sides of the alliances on that season, with Yul with the Aitutaki 4 and Parvati with the Rarotonga alliance. So I was always curious if they met up again, whether or not they would align together. And I think if it were a different situation, they absolutely would. But with how tight Yul is with Nick and Wendell, I know he's not very likely to turn on 2 very trustworthy allies. So I really think Michelle and Parvati have their work cut out for them. Maybe something will happen. Maybe another advantage is going to get thrown into the game. Although, now that I think about it, Parvati actually does have a pretty big advantage after this last elimination took place. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But Michelle and Parvati definitely have an uphill battle ahead of them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're completely screwed. But we're going to find out more about that possibly next week. And I'll get into it a little later as to why Parvati has a huge advantage right now. Although I think some of you may have figured it out. Meanwhile, let's head over to the brand new tribe, Yara, where this is the only tribe where Sele has the numbers. The only catch is the 3 members from Sele on this tribe are 3 people who really were not on the same page originally. Because you have Rob, you have Ben, and you have Adam. Obviously, Rob was not really aligned with Ben or Adam because of the old school and new school alliance. And Adam was caught playing both sides, which ticked off Ben and also ticked off Rob. So honestly, none of them really trust each other. And I think they all made a stupid mistake in talking about their mishaps right in front of Sophie and Sarah. Like, don't give them that hope. You don't tell them how bad your trust with each other is, because that's just going to give them even more ammunition and give them more of an incentive to try and split you up. Honestly, I knew the three of them were doomed from the start, but then again, with how bold and how thorough the tribal lines were, and with seemingly how badly nobody wanted to piss off the Rob father, I didn't really think too much of it, and I wasn't so sure yet if anything was going to happen with that alliance yet. And honestly, I wasn't really prepared for Yara to go to tribal council. I didn't think they would. Also, throughout this conversation, Rob finds out that the Tyson vote was a unanimous vote, which told me, because of how close Rob and Tyson were, obviously, with the poker alliance, and with how close they were outside of the game, that Rob wanted revenge for his friend. So I knew Rob was going to be gunning straight for Sarah and Sophie. So then the talk of the camp quickly turned to immunity idols, because, as was the norm on Survivor, since this was a brand new camp, that meant there was a brand new idol for someone to find. And everybody went nuts looking for it, and Rob was mentioning the fact how finding idols was not really his strong suit, even though he did find one in Redemption Island, and at one point was so happy he found one that he found an immunity idol clue on a reward challenge and threw it into a freaking volcano. He did bring up the fact how he couldn't find the immunity idol without the help of 4 clues, which really harkened me back to a day when people actually used clues to find immunity idols, which you don't really see that happen anymore. Nowadays, you just go nuts throughout the forest looking for anything that looks out of place. Even still, it seemed like Rob was going to find it, but no. Instead, Sophie found the immunity idol, quickly hid it in her pants, and managed to keep it hidden from the 3 guys. And since this was another idol, similar to the ones that were at Dakal and Sele, that meant that she had to give half of it to another player by sundown, or else it would not have any power. Obviously, I don't think this should come as a shock to anyone. Sophie gave her half of the immunity idol to Sarah, and that helped strengthen the bond between the two of them. And I was really happy for that, because Sophie, once I saw how the tribes were split, Sophie was someone I was really worried about. Like I said, how 3 of the free agents were lucky and ended up on the Sele tribe, Sophie didn't have that same luxury. And she was now stuck in a tribe with 3 strangers, and Sarah, who she never really communicated with that much on Dakal. But thankfully, obviously Sarah knows how much of a deep shit situation she's in right now. So she's willing to work with Sophie. And I really think, to quote Casablanca, I think this could be the start of a beautiful partnership. But we have to wait and see, because obviously Sarah still has her allegiance with Tony, and Sophie still has her allegiance with the free agents. So we're going to have to wait and see if this partnership will extend outside of the Yara tribe and will continue into the merge. So now we head into the immunity challenge. And it's just an immunity challenge, as there is seemingly no reward at stake. And once I saw the challenge, that also told me that we would not be seeing the Edge of Extinction this episode, which honestly didn't really surprise me, because I still didn't expect to see the Edge every single episode of Survivor. So it's fine to get a break from it. I don't need to be reminded who's there every single episode. I think we are going to see it next time, and that's what's important, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen there, because I think, not next episode, but the episode after that, my prediction is that is when they will have the first challenge for someone to come back into the game. And I'm still keeping my fingers crossed that my boy Ethan pulls it out. But let's go back to the immunity challenge. Right off the bat, Yara and Sele take an early lead, and the Dakal tribe is really struggling. And I think part of the reason is possibly because of the fact that Sandra was playing in the challenge for the first time, I think, since episode 3? No, episode 2, I'm sorry. Plus, not only did you have Sandra, you also had two giant strong guys, Jeremy and Tony, that they had to get over the wall. And right away, I was already preparing myself for Dakal to go to Tribal Council and for the Idol Cluster Storm to start happening. But once again, on Survivor, we had a complete upset in the challenge and a total come from behind victory for the Dakal tribe. Yara, who had been leading the entire challenge, completely stumbled once they got to the final portion, with Adam and Sophie really struggling to try and figure out a solution to the brain teaser they were given. Sele managed to skate by and pass them with ease, and Yara was struggling so much that Dakal also managed to pass them, sending the brand new tribe of Yara to Tribal Council. So when I heard Yara was going to Tribal Council, I was both a little disappointed, but also really excited in a weird way. I was disappointed in that I would have rather seen Dakal or Sele go to Tribal Council, just based on the giant grudges I've seen forming on each of those tribes. But at the same time, I realized that something big was going to happen for the Yara tribe. And that I realized that there could be the potential of a giant move being made and possibly Boston Rob going home. Because once I realized we were a third of the way into the game and we had made it to the team switch, it really started to hit me that the three biggest players of this coming into this entire season, Rob, Sandra, and Parvati, were all still in the game, which was something I never would have predicted if you had asked me who I thought would have been eliminated by this point. I probably would have said at least one of them would have been gone, maybe two. So many of the eliminations this season so far, which have been pretty tame, like Natalie, Danny, Ethan, like not really winners with huge, giant, flashing resumes. I mean, Tyson was a big hit last episode, but even still, even with him, he wasn't really someone in a huge position in this game, so I wasn't really too upset to see him go, even though I like Tyson. I had a feeling that we were on the cusp of a giant magnitude shift occurring very, very soon. So the Yara tribe comes back to camp, and already I'm still looking at the alliance of Adam, Ben, and Rob, because I knew deep down that alliance was never going to stick, and that alliance was pretty much doomed to fail. But at the water well, the three guys were talking, and they all agreed that they would not write each other's name down, but would instead go after Sarah. And because Rob is such a mastermind at this game, he decided to come up with an idea to make sure that no one was going to leave his sight, and to make sure that no other moves were going to be occurring. So, as with the title of the episode, we were introduced to Rob's buddy system on steroids, where he made everybody come back to camp, and he watched everyone, and he made sure they all stayed there until elimination. But, like I said, Sarah and Sophie weren't quite completely screwed yet, because not only did they have Sophie's immunity idol, they also had Sarah's steal a vote advantage that she got 2 episodes ago. So they had quite an impressive toolbox and quite a lot of options for how to navigate this elimination. And even still, I was already preparing myself in my head that Boston Rob was going to be going home, because Sarah and Sophie were finally doing the move and taking the initiative that I thought somebody at Sele would have had by now, in that they should have just gone after Rob instead of trying to please him. But now that he's completely separated from his really only other ally, Parvati, they had a golden opportunity. So they knew that they had a couple of options. They could either use the immunity idol, save their butts and just get rid of Rob, or steal a vote to ensure that they have 3 votes, and once again, vote out Rob. But with 2 very powerful advantages, they wanted to hang on to them for as long as they could, and rightfully so, Because in a game with so many big winners, you need all the help you can get, and you want to make sure you make them last for as long as you can. So already they were talking with Adam and Ben and trying to plant it in their heads that now is the time to get rid of Boston Rob. But because of Rob's buddy system, they didn't really have a ton of time to really lock things down with either Adam or Ben. So they didn't know what to expect going into Tribal Council, and neither did we. The only thing I knew for certain is that I knew there was a very, very high chance that Boston Rob was not going to survive this vote, and that if he did, it would be a friggin' miracle. So, Tribal Council happens, and even Jeff is surprised when Boston Rob mentions how everyone just kind of stayed at camp because of his buddy system and didn't really sneak off. And quick side note, because Ben mentioned how they pretty much spent time talking about food and desserts and cookies, and Probst mentioned, you spent all that time talking about cookies? It made me think that I think this is the second time in Survivor's history that cookies have been prominently mentioned at Tribal Council, if you remember Survivor Philippines, with Angie Layton's infamous quote of, "If I could have something on the island, I'd want cookies," which is still one of the stupidest things I've ever heard on Survivor. But everyone is still not really giving that much away. Sarah and Sophie are kind of making an open gesture to anyone that they would love to work with them. Rob seems to be pretty confident in that he thinks his buddy system worked. And then we go to the vote, and this is where we find out if Adam and Ben actually did decide to jump ship to help Sarah and Sophie. Well, already, once the vote started, that confirmed that Sarah was not going to use her steal a vote advantage. And once the votes were being read, it also confirmed that Sophie was not going to play her idol. So this could have spelled complete disaster for the two of them. But thankfully, they had nothing to worry about. Both Adam and Ben flipped over to their side, and Boston Rob, the Godfather, the King of Survivor, the only person to ever play this game 5 times, was sent home. And you know what? There's a part of me that's bummed to see Boston Rob leave the game, especially so early, which I know he's still in the game, but it sucks to see him banished to the edge so early. But at the same time, I applaud Sarah and Sophie for actually taking the initiative and accomplishing what nobody else was able to do or muster up the courage to do. And I guess, yes, Adam and Ben should get that credit too, but more so to Sarah and Sophie because they were the ones who orchestrated this gigantic blindside. So kudos to them, and it definitely tells me that they're ones to watch, and it confirms even more that they're people I want to see get really, really far in the game. Right up there with Yule. In fact, I think that may be my ideal final 3. I don't know yet. There's still a lot of game left to be played. But at the same time, while I think this was a great move for Sarah and Sophie, I don't think this was a great move for Adam and Ben. Because they had the numbers. They could have just as easily stuck with Rob and gotten rid of Sarah, which also would have gotten rid of her advantage, and maintained control in this game. I mean, if they wanted to get rid of Rob, they should have done it when Sele was still its original tribe. So I'm happy that they made the move to get rid of him, but I think those two made the move at the absolutely worst time. Because if Sele does go to Tribal Council again, chances are Sarah or Sophie will use one of their advantages, and then Adam and Ben are screwed. But we're just going to have to see until next time to see if that's going to happen. Because there is still the chance that Adam and Ben could work together and split up this power duo and leave everything in question for everyone. So, Boston Rob was eliminated from Survivor, which meant he had to give away his fire tokens, and I could completely forgotten until the end that he had 2 fire tokens to will someone. And not surprisingly, he willed them to Parvati, which brings Parvati's fire token total up to 4. She is tied with Natalie for the most fire tokens out of anyone, and in the lead for the most fire tokens out of anybody still in the actual game. And if I'm right, I think Parvati now has enough tokens to buy some sort of an advantage. And with how bleak the numbers are on Sele, I think she'd be really smart too. Because she could possibly buy a brand new immunity idol, use it at Tribal Council, and really split that Free Asian Alliance up. Which, personally, I don't want to see that, but it'd still be a giant move. And I think if they did buy that advantage, I have a good feeling I know who they would vote out. And I have a feeling they would probably vote out Wendell over Nick and Yule as sort of a little bit of justice for Michelle. So that does it for this episode of Survivor. Next time it looks like we see the Yara tribe really celebrating the fact that Boston Rob is gone and they can really start to play their own games again. Plus we see Tyson up to something really shady on the edge of extinction, and 2 contestants will be eliminated and sent to the edge of extinction next episode. Because Probst explained how 2 tribes are going to elimination, but he also said 2 tribes are voting somebody out. So that doesn't mean it's that trick of 2 tribes going to Tribal Council at the same time and voting 1 person out. That's not going to happen. 2 tribes losing, 2 people going home. So a lot's going to happen next time. And one more important bit of Survivor news that I feel is important to mention. It's not exactly great news. I mean, it's not great news, but it's something I feel needs to be discussed really briefly, in that Survivor Season 41 production was supposed to start in March, but unfortunately it was announced that that production will be delayed temporarily on account of the coronavirus, which was something I kind of saw coming. I knew that was going to be inevitable. Still not something I love to hear. I'm hoping that everything gets straightened out really, really soon. I'm hoping that all this coronavirus outbreak starts to die down, and I'm hoping that everything with the world can get back to normal and that we can just move forward and not have to worry about this potentially life-threatening disease. So, sorry to end on a somber note, but I felt it was important to mention really quickly. That's going to do it for this episode of Reality Bites. Boston Rob is gone, and a brand new game is possibly on the horizon. I'll see you next time. Be sure to check out my other channel, 239MI, for other videos. But until then, this is Jake Schaff signing off. I will see you next time.